It's October 30th, 2007. I am Michael Aron of NJN News. We're going to continue our series of interviews for the Byrne archive of the Rutgers project on the governors. Governor Byrne is back with us this morning to continue our series of interviews with him, and we're about to get started. Governor, we're going to begin.
Let us begin.
And as you were talking to the folks downstairs, it occurred to Don that you were talking to them about relations between a governor and a legislature, and that might be an interesting place to begin this morning. How did you view the legislature after you got to know them, after you'd been governor for a while?
Well, first of all, in my day as governor-elect, we got a turnover in the legislature, a huge turnover, and it went from big Republican to big Democrat, and so there were a lot of new faces. And again, in those days, the governor was recognized as the person who was going to choose the leadership of the legislature. And so Jim Dugan, who was the state chairman and key guy, came to me with a list of who was going to be what. And that's the way it went. I had the veto. I vetoed one. I'm not going to tell you which one, but I vetoed one appointment, but the rest of it had to have my approval, or he would have done it my way.
To what extent is that still true 35 years later?
Yeah, and by the way, I had told Howard Woodson that if I won that election, he was going to be the Speaker of the Assembly. Howard Woodson was the first black Speaker of the New Jersey Assembly.
First and only.
Maybe. Anyway, and he was good. He was a good one. But the leadership was there, was my choosing. I had difficulties with the leadership in terms of egos. But
who was the Senate president?
Pat Dodd was the Senate president. And Pat Dodd was from Mars. He's a bright guy. He's a very conscientious guy. But every once in a while, his nose would get out of joint. And he was hard to bring aboard on the income tax issue. He had a B, but he was hard to bring aboard. I had to use the county chairman to put some pressure on in both houses. Dick Cody will tell you that in order for me to get his vote for the state income tax, I had to give him an exit off Route 280 in Orange, which was a good idea. I mean, we needed that exit. But anyway, everybody regarded the income tax as a life or death issue, and you couldn't really bargain with people who saw themselves going down a defeat if they voted for income. Tommy Devon, for instance, assemblyman, who was from a district which would benefit as much as any district from a state income tax, would never vote for a state income tax. I saw him recently. He said, Governor, he said, it was life. They would have taken me off the ticket if I had voted.
He was from Carteret or someplace around there?
Yeah, perfect district to benefit from a state income tax. He wouldn't do it.
Working class district.
He was in Tom Dunn's district, and Tom Dunn was really a right-winger when it came to certain issues, although he was a Democrat. Tom Dunn, by the way, I spoke at a dinner for him when he was retiring. I said he was a great Democrat. Democrats for Reagan, Democrats for Whitman. Anyway, so the legislature, with all of the problems that I'm telling you about, though, legislature was there when I really needed them, and we got 41 votes a lot of times for issues that wouldn't have happened without some collegiality.
Was it tougher to deal with the legislature when you first were elected because there were so many Democrats? They had a supermajority. Was
Yep.
it tougher to
Yep.
corral them together?
I remember talking, when I first was elected, Nelson Rockefeller was still the governor of New York. And I went over to see him, spent an afternoon with him. And he told me that the toughest time he had as governor of New York was when he had the biggest Republican majorities in the legislature. And what happens with large majorities is nobody feels obligated to vote on any particular measure. And so you put a bill on the board, and the guy who sees it as unpopular for him in his district will say, well, you got 66 Democrats, you don't need me. And so enough people say that, you don't have 41 votes. And that became a problem, especially in the income tax.
Did you feel that as governor you had more power than any legislator in the state, and you
had more power.
And you were going to exercise it. You were first among equals, as it were?
No, I wasn't even first among equals. I was first. The legislature, first of all, the legislature in those days did not have the kind of legislative services and staff and so forth that they have now. And I was working for Governor Minor back in the 50s when the legislature had nothing. The legislature, by the way, used to meet at night, Monday night, and that was it.
Really? Until when?
I don't know, but when I was in college, I remember when I was in college, going down to Trenton and seeing the legislature meeting on Monday nights, and that was about it. So they didn't have the resources to develop their own policy and their own agenda.
Collectively, they are equal to the executive branch. No individual legislator.
I understand that, and I did understand it, and I had to deal with them, and I dealt with them. But basically, it was the governor's program that went through. It was not the legislature's program.
Can a governor be too deferential to the legislature?
Well, in southern states, the legislature is probably more powerful than the governor. But in New Jersey, at least in my time, no, you had to let the legislature know that you needed them, that they were part of the program. I would meet from time to time. I would go up to Passaic County, meet with the Passaic County legislators at a restaurant in Patterson or someplace. And I would go to Bergen and meet with them and go down south. And the legislators liked that because we got coverage in the local papers. But I certainly showed them the deference from that standpoint.
Do you think that still happens? Does the governor still go to meet with the county legislative delegation?
I think the governor does. Either that or has them up. I mean, you start off by having them at the governor's mansion. They like that. And I would have, for instance, when I was putting the income tax together, I would have pool parties on Sunday afternoons, and the legislators would bring their kids to swim and cook hamburgers, and we'd have an afternoon of it. And there are people today who remember that that's the way it worked. So they started out by wanting to come to the governor's office. We'd have sessions at the governor's office, or events or social events at the governor's office. And it did develop a camaraderie. and that helped. But then they also wanted you to come to their district and meet them at their district and make the local papers. And it was a nice blend of things.
Rightly or wrongly, you gained a reputation as governor in your dealings with the legislature as kind of take it or leave it. Fair comment or not?
No, it wasn't quite take it or leave it. I mean, if they had some suggestions, but I had a program, and maybe we need more of this. I think the governor should start out with things he wants to get done, and then try to get them done. And you talk to legislators, you outline the program to them, you make your suggestions, you have your hard times with them, but here's why we're here. I mean,
do you think, the governors of more recent times have just sort of improvised and have not had a program?
No, but frankly, we had some tough issues, and issues you had to fight for, and issues you had to lose your popularity on. But why are you going to be governor?
Well,
if all you want to do is sit there and be happy for 4 years.
I don't mean to move the conversation too much into the present. We want to talk about your administration, but the current governor is trying to push monetization. Is he doing it the right way?
He thinks he is. I've talked to him about that. He thinks he is. He thinks he has to get by this election and then have an objective evaluation of monetization.
That's a tough program like the income tax, is it not? Aren't there parallels between what he's trying to do and what you tried to do?
Monetization there are more alternatives in monetization. The income tax was absolutely a live or die issue with legislators. I mean, you had to get them to accept the concept of an income tax. We spent 2 years working out different formula and other alternatives. I mean, they would come to me often with an alternative to the state income tax. Matter of fact, Ray Bateman in '77 had an alternate to the income tax, even after I got it passed. And so what I think a governor has to do is determine what he wants and then willing to make adjustments, but not alternatives.
Since you left office, legislative leaders have become more powerful politically, partly due to the use of their PACs for fundraising.
Yes.
Is that a good or a bad thing?
Well, I think it's a good thing. I mean, for instance, a legislator can run a pretty good race, even in unpopular times. I mean, Dick Cody can get himself elected, not because he's got enough money to do that, plus the kind of popularity that is unprecedented.
His?
His.
To what do you attribute that?
His personality, his hands-on type of approach to governing. He's genuinely interested in people. I mean, Dick Cody is as strong a political persona as you could design.
If John Corzine chose not to run in '09, you could see Dick Cody coming back as governor?
Well, there's a lot of speculation that if Clinton wins the presidency, that John Corzine is going to go down to Washington and that Cody will take over. Who knows?
So Cody is your idea of a very successful New Jersey
He's
politician.
a lot like Dick Hughes. Yep.
How so? How is he like Hughes?
Warm and fuzzy.
Were you warm and fuzzy?
No.
What were you?
I was a guy who got things done. We ran in 1977 without at all suggesting that I was a nice guy. I had television appearances with Ray Bateman, my opponent, in which I would say, if you want to vote for the nicer guy, you vote for him. That was not me. What I was, and we projected it this way, you got to respect what he's done. And I did a lot of things that I thought deserved recognition by the voter, and they did. They wound up realizing that the state was better as a result of the state income tax, for instance, and a couple other things that we did. And by the way, some of the things we did at the time, I've told you this, were not popular. Building the Giants Stadium in 1974 was not a popular thing to do.
Why not?
Because people didn't see any payoff in it.
How could they not? Pro football coming to New Jersey.
It was projected as building something in a swamp. The field was going to go under. It was a joke. It was regarded as a joke. And
people feared a waste of public dollars.
Yeah, and money that could be used otherwise, and it really, I'm telling you, and you can look at what was going on at the time. Neither of us really advocated building that stadium in the campaign of '73. If I had lost that election, the Giant Stadium would never have been built. Stanman was not for it. He was from South Jersey. It was irrelevant to him and did not support it. And as a matter of fact, even I, in campaigning in '73, would come up and say, here's how much it cost, here's how many touchdowns they made, here's the cost per touchdown. And it was an appealing type of a negative approach.
You say that Cody and Hughes were warm and fuzzy and you were not. At the risk of embarrassing you, I would say that today you have a warm and fuzzy persona in the world of New Jersey politics. You're a beloved figure, frankly, in the world of New Jersey politics today.
That's all because I made that one remark about people are waving at me with all five fingers. I do have a sense of humor. And I've always had a sense of humor. I had a sense of humor when they said I didn't. They just ignored the lines when I first was
you were funny back then?
Yes.
They just didn't get it.
No, they didn't pay any attention to it. I said that I was going to, there was a gas shortage. I said that I was going to row down to Trenton from Princeton on the Delaware Raritan Canal. That was funny. Nobody paid attention to it. And by the way, I was the first governor not to go to his inaugural in formal clothes.
Were you?
Yes. So street clothes. I mean, my suit. A lot of things that.
What was your mindset behind that?
You look funny in formal clothes. I mean, you look at pictures from Dick Hughes and Bob Minor's inaugural, they look silly.
You were modernizing the governorship.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we got rid of the car, the limousine. I was the first governor not to have that big limousine.
For inauguration or for every day?
Everything. The governor had the limousine, always.
What kind of limousine?
I don't know.
Cadillac?
Limousine. It was the kind you see now with kids going to proms.
everybody's a governor
Yeah.
for a day, right? Some people say your humor publicly became more obvious after your reelection. Was that because you became a more confident person?
No, I really think, and I may be biased on it, I really think that after the second election, that people began to pay more attention to the funny things I said, and I would take a little. Although I was willing to take a risk with my humor. I remember when I campaigned in 1977, I would tell a story about the guy who was a successful fisherman, and he was asked why. He said, because when I get up in the morning to fish, if my wife is lying on her left side, I fish on the left side of the boat. If she's on the right side, the other side, I fish on that side of the boat. And he was asked, suppose she's lying flat on her back, and he said, I don't go fishing. Now, Dave Wilentz called me. Dave Wilentz was a very popular friend and political mentor. And he said, you can't use that story. But I did. I used a lot of things like that were sort of funny. But it's only in the second time, and after I left office, that people said, well, he's sort of funny. And they would pick up the line rather than the policy.
Let me ask you about another thing that you were addressing that group this morning about, and that was selection of judges. I was struck by your saying that the difference between your era and today's era, that in your era, the people you appointed had to take a pay cut, whereas today many people who are appointed to the bench get a raise. What does that say?
That says we're not getting the quality of judges that we got in my day. Everybody will tell you that. Any good lawyer in New Jersey will tell you that the quality of judges in my administration was top flight, and that they can't say that today.
And why was that? Because you were a prosecutor and knew the value of a judge?
Several things. One, I was a prosecutor and was in court and was a judge, and I knew the trial lawyers in the state, and I knew who was a good lawyer and who wasn't. Second, I didn't owe anybody anything so that I could appoint those people. Whereas now, I can say to a senator, there's a really good person who ought to be on the bench. And the response I get is, can't get any support. There's a lady I've recommended for years who is a brilliant lawyer, member of the Law Journal Board, a member of Mensa, and I have recommended her for judgeship a number of times. She can't get a senator to go out front for her, and she's not on the bench.
Well, how did they get their senators to go out front for them 35 years ago?
Because I had set up a system where, until he died, Joe Weintraub had a veto of any potential judicial candidate. If he said this candidate is no good, that was the end of it.
That was your informal system.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything formalized.
No. And everybody knew that. And the Bar Association also had a say on appointing and vetoing.
Well, they still do, apparently.
Yeah, but I think they were a little tougher in my day because I had set a standard. And good people became, and people I knew who had no support politically, went on the bench.
How'd you get them through? How'd you get their senators to sign off on them?
Well, it was this or nothing. I remember I had discussions. I'll give you an example. Chippy Coleman, whose guy I knew, played basketball for Dartmouth, had an excellent reputation, lawyer in Monmouth County, and a successful lawyer. And I appointed him to the Superior Court. Al Beetleson said to me, no, all of the judges in Monmouth County start in the county district court, which was then in existence and was really a lower court where you did slop work.
Beetleson was a Republican leader in the Senate.
He was a senator and a leader, yeah. So this guy would not have taken it as, spending a few years. And so I appointed him to the Superior Court. And Beetleson would not move it. Eventually, through Senator Brian Kennedy, who was just totally opposite from me politically, but we became good friends, talked them in Monmouth County into doing it my way. And Chippy Coleman became a judge, an outstanding judge. And that was replicated in a number of places.
Was it difficult to get first-rate lawyers to take a pay cut and go on the bench, or was it so prestigious that they all wanted to do?
You couldn't get anyone you wanted, but you could get some. The guy who's making $5 million at Lowenstein, even today, isn't going to take a judgeship right away.
Is a judgeship as desired today as it was back then? I mean, is it as...
It's desired by a lot of people. I mean, you could get judges, if you put it out to bid, you could get judges for practically nothing. But to get the top people that you want, and you can get them. I mean, Stuart Rabner is an excellent example of a judge who could be making a lot more money in a Wall Street firm, or even a top New Jersey law firm. But by and large, you got lots of people, including some good. There are some good lawyers in New Jersey who, for instance, work in the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General herself is a very good lawyer. Would be commanding a top salary on Wall Street, and was. But aside from that group, the average lawyer in New Jersey is not making anywhere near what they project as starting salary for lawyers out of law school. A lawyer who's making $200,000 to start is not the ordinary lawyer in New Jersey.
How do you view the trade-off that these people like Stuart Rabner and Attorney General and Milgram make between very high salary and the opportunity to both influence public policy and see your name in the paper on a regular basis? How do you view that trade-off? How does a person...
The judgment you make. I mean, I'm no Stuart Rabner, but I was offered a number of very good jobs when I was a young lawyer, and was trying to decide money versus fun, and I sacrificed the money. I remember.
Is that what it is? It's money versus fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was offered a job as chief counsel to Hoffman & Roche when I was a fairly young lawyer.
Before you were Essex County prosecutor?
While I was Essex County prosecutor. And, Essex County prosecutor's salary was $17,000 a year. And with half in a roach, I could virtually name my salary. And I decided to stay with things that interested me and where I thought I could make a difference. And that's what lawyers do. And you don't become a lawyer just to make money.
There are fewer lawyers now serving in the legislature than when you were in office. Good or bad? Or indifferent? There are fewer lawyer legislators today than there used to be. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
But I'm not quite with.
There aren't as many of the 120 legislators.
Yeah.
In your day, many more of them were lawyers than today.
Maybe.
What do you think about that? Is that? I mean, lawyers know how to make laws, or presumably they know how to make laws, and so there's a natural.
I don't think being a lawyer is a sine qua non of being a legislator, and I think some of the better legislators are not lawyers. Cody's not a lawyer, and nobody knows more about the legislative process than Cody. So, from that standpoint, I'm not sure that. And by the way, I think fewer of the top students are becoming lawyers these days. They see Wall Street beckoning, and they will choose the Harvard Business School over the Harvard Law School.
What do you think of the concept of the citizen legislator? Some people say that initially legislators were supposed to be farmers and part-timers and bring their expertise to Trenton, and that it's become too professionalized. What's your view on that question?
Well, the trouble with part-time legislators who get into it and want to get in and out of it is there isn't the kind of follow-through that you'd want to see from professionals. In other words, I'm a legislator. I'm here for a couple of terms, and then I'm.
You don't think that works as well as people who build up experience and seniority?
I don't know. That's a universal criticism of the legislator who goes gung ho and then loses interest. If you keep your interest, that'd be great. Guys like Perzicki with Common Cause. I don't think he's a lawyer. He may be, but he is a lawyer. But anyway, he's the kind of guy that has some persistence. This is 2007, by the way.
Some people have proposed a full-time legislature with much higher salaries, but tight restrictions on other income. What's your thought on whether that's a good idea?
Well, I think you can. First of all, I think you almost have legislators full-time now. They're in. This is 2007. They're in every Monday. They're in every Thursday. They're in various other committee meetings. So making them full-time as legislators, first of all, people are doing 2 or 3 full-time jobs now. But anyway, we're talking about my time. We're not talking about now.
You mentioned that the legislature back then had fewer resources than today. That there was the Office of Legislative Services was skimpy, if not non-existent. Was it better when the legislators had to do more work on their own, more research on their own?
I come from the viewpoint of the governor, and I started in government in 1955 I started with Bob Miner. I started as assistant counsel to Joe Weintraub, who was his personal counsel. At that time, the legislature would meet on Monday, and I would, on occasion, representing the governor, go sit with the minority leader. We didn't have the majority. I would sit with the minority leader. I would have a list of the bills that were on the board, and I would have a list of positions on those bills. And so, by and large, the Democratic minority in the Assembly, mostly I sat in the Assembly, by and large, they would vote the way the memorandum that I had told them to vote. And that got the governor's position established. Now the trouble with it in those days was we didn't have a majority of Democrats, so I can't give you from that standpoint. The way the Republicans worked at that time, by the way, was that the Republicans would meet in caucus, and whatever the majority of the caucus voted was the way that everybody was obliged to vote on the bill. And so if it won by one vote in the caucus, the whole Republican majority would have to vote that way, even if they had enough Democratic votes to turn the bill the other way.
That's very different from today.
Yeah.
Were the legislators individually that you dealt with, the minority legislators, were they more familiar with the issues then than now when they have all this staff to prepare stuff for them?
First of all, I remember there was a nice lady who was an assemblywoman from Hudson County. And I remember going up to her one time, this is back in 1955, and saying, Irene, we need you.
Remember her last name?
Brown, Irene Brown. We need your vote on this bill. And she told me point blank, the mayor hasn't told us how to vote yet. And there's a famous story about Billy Musso and on a bill being up on his feet opposing the bill and getting a note saying that Mayor Kenney wants you to vote for this bill. He said, now I've given you all the reasons why you should be against the bill. Let me tell you why this is a good bill. So that regardless of the research, the point is that in a lot of cases, the decision wasn't even made by the legislators who were voting on the bill.
Let's talk about your second term a little bit. I think that we spoke at great length about your re-election the last time we got together. Let's talk about some of the things that you focused on in your second term. I have a list here that you made. New Jersey Transit, was that first term or second term?
Second term.
Talk about that, would you?
Yeah, if you look at New Jersey Transit today, you say it was inevitable that that's the way it had to be, and it's the only way that transit would work in New Jersey. That's hindsight. When we put together New Jersey Transit, it was a fierce fight to get the votes, to get the bill to be the way we wanted it, and to get the leadership for it. And let me go back a step. Here's what we had before I did the bill. We had what was known as a commuter operating agency in New Jersey. I was a member of it when I was on the Public Utility Commission. Dave Goldberg sort of ran it as Transportation Commission. And we would give money to public service, coordinated transit, to meet their deficit, because mass transit was being run at a deficit. It had to be, or else the fares would be out of sight.
Were these buses or trains?
Oh, no. This is buses. Trains were something else. But the buses were being run at a deficit. We gave money to, we would give fare increases, but even the fare increases couldn't keep up with the needs.
So these were private bus lines that you gave money to subsidize?
Yeah. Public service coordinated transit, which was well run, by the way. Governor Harper ran it well, but you couldn't do it. So we would give them subsidies, and that's the way it was working. And the subsidies basically let us finance the buses, but not run the buses. And so at some point it came to where we had to take over the buses. There's a lot of opposition to that, labor unions especially, and so we had to get a bill together creating New Jersey Transit. I had to find somebody who, with real credibility, to run it, and Lou Gambasini was the ideal candidate.
Who was he at the time?
Lou Gambasini was running PATH, which was the railroad between Newark and between Newark, Hudson County. It was the PATH. Everybody knows what the PATH is today. It's a bunch of trains. He was running it. He was a professional.
Did he work for the Port Authority?
Yes, he worked for the Port Authority, and handled it well. I got him to agree to run New Jersey Transit. I got the bill introduced. It had fierce labor opposition, and we had to make some compromises.
Why was labor so concerned?
Because they had a better deal dealing with the private sector than they would dealing with government, and so we had to, as I say, make some compromises. But we got it through. I got Lou Gambasini running it. He was good. He was the key to.
Did you make him transportation commissioner, or did you install him as the operating executive at New Jersey Transit, or both?
I forget.
Commissioner?
I made him the commissioner, but he also ran the New Jersey Transit.
Do you recall whether it was a tough, long fight to get the bill passed?
It wasn't a long fight, but it was a bitter fight. And it was a protracted fight, but not long. And it worked. And then we got the New Jersey Transit to take over the railroad.
They too were private at the time, or
we had to take that. Yeah, the Pennsylvania Railroad was still in existence. Even on the Public Utility Commission, I was fighting with the Pennsylvania Railroad.
What years were you on the PUC?
From 1968 to 1970.
And you were fighting with the Pennsylvania Railroad over their service?
Well, at one point, this is an interesting story. At one point, I opened up a docket at the Public Utility Commission about the condition of the Pennsylvania Railroad station.
In Newark?
In Newark. And I got sued. I didn't have any jurisdiction over that. So and they appealed it to the Supreme Court of New Jersey. And I remember the issue was, can I make the Pennsylvania Railroad clean up the station through my powers as the Public Utility Commission? So I never forget that case was argued in the New Jersey Supreme Court, and when Chief Justice Weintraub opened the briefs, he said the next case is the Dirty Railroad Station case, and we had it won. But they fought me tooth and nail.
What was the condition of the station?
It was dirty. It was sloppy. It was neglected.
Did they obey the court after that? Did they clean it up?
Yeah, a little bit. But I eventually took it over anyway. I also opened the docket when they had several accidents on Path. And Path ran the trains into Penn Station too. And I got a call from the counsel for the Port Authority saying I didn't have any jurisdiction to do that either. And I said, well, you got a subpoena? You don't think it's valid? Don't come. And that intimidated them enough so that they worked it out with me. But anyway, that's what happened, and that's why the genesis of New Jersey Transit. It couldn't have gone any other way, in my opinion. And we did the fight. And, you wonder sometimes why legislators have to be bribed or cajoled in order to vote for a bill. You would think if you got a bill that was really a very positive kind of bill, like New Jersey Transit or Pinelands even, that people would support it, but it doesn't happen.
What is it? Is it change? Is it fear of change?
No, it's partly because every legislator has a constituency, and it's not a statewide constituency for each legislator. And so you have various problems with various legislators. A legislator may have a number of union workers in his district, and they don't want New Jersey Transit, so he's not going to vote for it.
That's the way the system was designed, right?
Yeah.
Is it a good system?
Well, if I were governor, I wouldn't want a legislature bothering me. But you have to reconcile the various interests and the various considerations. And yeah, that is the way it works. And, Winston Churchill had it right.
Could you talk a little more about the role that railroads have played in New Jersey politics? Was it
before my time? Before
your time?
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I've read enough New Jersey history to know that the railroad tax was a big source of revenue for the state before we had income tax and sales tax and some of those. A railroad tax was a big deal.
The companies were taxed, or tickets were taxed?
No, the companies were. It was property. It was the property that was taxed. And so you had a big issue in Hudson County with the railroad tax. And a number of prominent lawyers made their reputations fighting the railroad tax one way or another.
Were most of these railroads out of state? They were headquartered in New York or elsewhere?
Well, they owned property in New Jersey. They owned railroad property. There was a lot of railroad property in Jersey City especially, and it was expensive railroad property. And so how you tax that railroad property was a big issue.
During what era? From when to when?
Oh, even before my time. And almost nothing before my time, but in the 30s, for instance, before the war.
By the time you were involved,
railroad
were railroads powerful, or were they waning?
They were powerful, but they weren't critical. And we did have a sales tax at some point, and that did them. And railroad probably became less valuable.
Want to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Okay.
Take a short break.
You're watching Mike's.
A couple of weeks ago, I had fun.
Yeah, I saw he was in the paper. He spoke in Washington.
Yeah.
About the New Jersey judiciary.
I saw his book review in the paper this
It was
weekend.
well written.
It was.
But when I introduced him, the woman who had spoken before me was talking about America's Vespucci, who happened to be Italian, and Marconi, who happened to be Italian, and this guy who happened to be Italian. So when I got up, I said, let me tell you something. Let me clear up one thing. Jimmy Zazzali doesn't happen to be Italian. He's Italian on purpose. Anyway.
Yeah, we're ready.
Governor, we were talking before we broke about New Jersey Transit. How important a part of your legacy is that?
Well, frankly, I think if we were serious about this, we would run New Jersey Transit trains, especially the suburban routes out of Essex, Morris, and Byrne County. We would run them every 20 minutes. If we knew that you could get a train every 20 minutes into New York and out of New York, it would substantially cut down on the automobile travel, the need for new roads and the need for new tunnels and so forth. We're not in a position to make that commitment. And if we did make it, it would look like a failure for a while because it would take a while for people to get used to it. But you go to London and you can, and we do, we go to London and we get a train every 8 minutes at worst. And so it works. The trouble with New Jersey Transit is, you're going to New York tonight and you miss a train back, it's an hour before you see another train, or maybe you don't get another train until the morning. So all we need to do with New Jersey Transit is run the trains, and it'll work.
Do we need to expand the lines, or are the lines sufficient if we had more trains running?
First of all, the way the lines are now, you would take care of most of the crowded conditions that we have on the highways. Just what we have now. I think expanding them. We had that fight with Millicent Fenwick, by the way, when we wanted to expand PATH down to Somerville. She fought it tooth and nail. Thought it would bring the riffraff into Somerset County. But if you get people into trains, it'll work, and if you have the trains running frequently, it'll work.
Do you rank the creation of New Jersey Transit right beneath the income tax and the Pinelands, or does it go farther down?
Frankly, I rate New Jersey Transit as something which was inevitable. Mickey Mouse could have been governor, and some people think he was, but anybody as governor would have had to recognize that need, is my point. The Pinelands, nobody but me.
Okay. We're going to get to the Pinelands some more at a certain point in time, but for the remainder of our time here today, I want to ask you about something that we were talking about earlier this morning before the camera was rolling, which is that a governor gets to meet a lot of interesting people. You talked about the fun of being governor. You meet people high up in the world of politics, high up in the world of entertainment. When you look back on your governorship, who springs to mind that you met? Who did you meet?
Well, first of all, I met the Queen of England. And I rode with the Queen of England from Newark Airport, alone. I rode with the Queen of England from Newark Airport to Bayonne docks, where she had her yacht. And there was a period of some almost half hour where we were alone. And that was sort of a sort of a...
Were you in her car or was she in your state car?
I think it was her car. It wasn't mine. And we talked about certain things, including the Irish situation and what that climate was in New Jersey at the time. And I asked her what she thought she would be doing if she weren't the Queen. And she said that she could never conceive herself as other than the Queen of England. It was interesting. But I also got to know Grace Kelly. And Grace Kelly and I got to be reasonably friendly. Grace Kelly's father middle name was Brendan. It was John Brendan Kelly. So that was a sort of a...
How did you get to know Grace Kelly?
Got to know Grace Kelly through Anita Colby. How did I get to know Anita Colby? I don't know. Anita Colby was a major model back in the 30s and sort of a movie star. And I got to know Anita Colby, Grace Kelly, and Sidney Kingsley all around the same time. Sidney Kingsley was a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright. Wrote Detective Story, Men in White, a number of first-class plays, and I got Sidney Kingsley to start the first film commission in New Jersey. It's been very successful ever since. And I think Celeste Holm, who I put on at the beginning, is, as we speak, still on it. She's 90 years old. She's still on the film commission. And they've done a tremendous job of bringing film and talent into New Jersey.
Did you see Grace Kelly in New Jersey, or you...
Both. I saw... As a matter of fact, I'll shorten this a little bit. Grace Kelly wrote me a letter, longhand, my last year in office, I think, and said that she was coming over with her son to look at colleges. And one of the colleges were going to be Princeton, and she would be in Princeton and love to see me for lunch. I had suggested that to her at one point. And so she came over. I had a luncheon for her. It was a disaster because I served lobster, and she was allergic to lobster. I had it outdoors, and it was hot, and she was allergic to bees. But anyway.
You sure she wasn't just allergic to New Jersey?
Yeah, no. Her family was a New Jersey family, basically. They had a summer home in, I think, Seattle City or someplace. Anyway, but we got to be pretty friendly. And
liked her? You like her? You like her?
Oh, yeah. I had also met her. She came up to Waterloo Village one time. It happened to be the coldest day of the year. And she once commented to somebody that she had spent the hottest day of her life and the coldest day of her life with Governor Byrne. But Grace got an interesting person. And I knew her father, and I knew her father owned a racetrack, the Atlantic City racetrack. And I knew her brother, who had been the Olympic champion, and there was a councilman in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia for a while. Matter of fact, I spoke at his victory celebration, his victory dinner in Philadelphia. So I got to know the family a little bit. Yeah.
What presidents, I think we've spoken about Jimmy Carter. You had a real relationship with Carter.
Yeah.
Any other presidents that you encountered when you were governor?
When I was governor, Nixon was president. And I never really got to know Nixon as president. I met him later, after we both left office, and I lamented to him that we had never gotten to know each other. And he arranged a luncheon. It's just the two of us with his son-in-law. So I did get to know Nixon at that time.
Well, he was a resident of New Jersey at that time, correct?
He may have been. Yeah.
Upper Saddle River?
He was a big Giants football fan.
Yeah?
So, and I would see him over at Giant Stadium once in a while.
What was your impression of him, the most disgraced ex-president of our time?
He was the guy who, when I got to know him, was looking for friends. I thought I sort of felt sorry for him, even though, and I never did tell him that he got me elected governor.
Watergate.
Anyway, that was Nixon.
Do you remember what you talked about at lunch with him?
When I had lunch with him, I made it a point to get several books out which were published before Watergate, so I could find topics that would not infringe on Watergate. So we had a very pleasant time, and we did not go into. He did ask me why he thought Jimmy Carter had lost to Reagan, and we got into a discussion of that. And so forth.
Do you recall anybody's theory, his theory, your theory, as to why Jimmy Carter lost to Reagan?
That Jimmy Carter didn't stand for anything. I think that was the basic problem with Jimmy Carter, and I think we sort of agreed on that. Jimmy Carter would be for something, he would find it too expensive, and he would back away from it. So you can't look at Jimmy Carter's administration and say that this is what he did or even what he tried to do and failed. It's just that he's not the Jimmy Carter of the income tax or the Jimmy Carter of the this or that. Anyway, that was Jimmy Carter. I got to like Jimmy Carter. He thought I was a handicap to him because I was in a state where I was messing things up and doing unpopular causes, so that he sort of shied away from me in campaigns.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But that was Jimmy Carter. Anyway. Jerry Ford, I really didn't get to know much. My kids did. My daughter Susan would go to the White House, and I remember her telling me, "Gee, Daddy, when you see a movie at the White House, they serve you popcorn on a silver tray." But she got to know the Ford kids. Anyway,
why was that? I mean, you're a Democratic governor, he's a Republican president. How did that happen?
You would go to social events at the White House, and social events were less partisan. So yes, we got to know, and I got to like Jerry Ford. I remember introducing him at a dinner after we both left office, and people were coming. I was sitting next to him. People were coming up asking him for autographs. And I said to him, "You want me to try to scoot these people away?" And he said, "No, I enjoy this." And I'm told my autograph is worth $30. And I handed him my program and I asked him for an autograph. But that was Jerry Ford. Ronald Reagan, I got to like. Famous story with Ronald Reagan is I go to a event at the White House after he's elected. When he becomes president, I'm the head of the Democratic Governors Association. And so I get invited as the token to White House functions. And I see him and I tell him a story about how I always wanted to play tennis on the White House tennis court, and that Carter kept putting me off. And so he calls his aide over and says, "Next time Governor Byrne is in Washington, make sure he gets to play on the White House tennis court." And they arranged it. I played the White House tennis court, Reagan. And I keep saying that's why Reagan got reelected.
He kept his word?
Yeah. So I did have 4 presidents, which is unique for a governor, to serve under more than 2 presidents. That's what I did.
Let's talk about Reagan for a second. You say that Carter didn't stand for anything, and you had spoken earlier this morning about how a governor has to have a program. Reagan had a program, right? Was he a successful president with a program?
Well, First of all, Reagan was liked, and that made a difference. I mean, it made you feel good about America. Not us Democrats, but it made people feel good about America. And he's credited with maybe more than he's entitled to be with relations with Russia. Tear down the wall was good PR, and it came about.
Who do you think has been the most effective president during your lifetime?
During my lifetime, Franklin Roosevelt.
How so?
Because he got a lot of things done. He got us out of the Depression. He got a series of courageous programs through, risked his popularity, and then got us through the war. And may have been some mistakes along the way, but I think Roosevelt was a president for our time, and deserves to be recognized among the great presidents. John Kennedy was the most inspirational president. I think people like me became interested in participating in government because we saw that John Kennedy had a vision, and John Kennedy made us feel good about America, and we wanted to be part of that. And so I still quote John Kennedy in a lot of situations.
We were discussing Ethel Kennedy and Robert Kennedy. Did you know them?
Oh yeah, still do. I still do know Ethel. I see Ethel sort of frequent, not in the last year or so, but Ethel and Kathleen. When Kathleen ran for governor, I helped her out a lot.
Governor of Maryland?
Yeah.
She was unsuccessful?
She was indeed. But I thought she had the kind of vision that her father had.
What's your recollection of her father, and did you know him?
I knew him not when I was governor because he was gone. I knew him as a guy who had the vision of making a difference. And,
from the beginning, people say that he, you think he had the vision from the beginning? Because people say he evolved and became a visionary by the end after having been more of a street fighter at the beginning.
Well, I think he knew how to play Massachusetts politics. But I really think that he wanted, I see things that are, and ask why, and ask why not. No, I think he really had that kind of romantic, visionary view of what the country ought to be.
How about Jacqueline Kennedy? Did you know her?
Met her, said hello to her, that was about it.
How about foreign leaders other than the Queen of England? By the way, what was your impression of her? You told the lovely story that she couldn't imagine being anything but the Queen of England. What was your impression of?
That she was the Queen of England. That was about it. I mean, Margaret Thatcher I met and had dinner with her at whatchamacallit's house, Washington, Catherine Graham's house one night. And she was somebody who, you watched and you.
Was she prime minister at the time?
Yes, and I used to watch her press conferences too. No, she was all right.
Any other foreign leaders spring to mind?
Oh, sure. Prime Minister of Italy would come over, and I would take him to the race. He loved the racetrack, and I would take him to the Meadowlands, and we would spend the whole evening.
Who was the president of Italy at the time?
Don't ask me.
Okay.
I think
I retract the question.
Huh?
I retract the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there were other lesser leaders. I would see the Prime Minister of Ireland. And Who was that? I'll think of his name because I got to know him pretty well.
Did you take any?
Charlie Hoy.
Hoy.
Yeah, that's knew him before he got indicted. And he was a charming guy.
Did he get indicted?
Yeah.
Did you go to Ireland when you were governor?
Yes. Oh, we had that's an interesting story because the Irish government invited the governors of the 13 original states to come to Ireland. And we came over, and it was sort of a celebration because this was the celebration of our independence from England. And Ireland liked anything that had to do with breaking off from England. So we went over, and the 13 original governors were over. We had a great time.
Was this in that bicentennial year?
Yes, yeah, the bicentennial, 1976. And off that, I went to visit my grandmother's birthplace. But one night,
what was your grandmother's birthplace?
Was in County Mayo, a town of Castlebar. They had a big celebration for me, and we had a very nice time. Anyway, while we were over there as a group, we had a dinner at the ambassador's residence in Phoenix Park, and he had a beautiful black lawn, expansive back lawn, green. So I organized a foot race in the back lawn. I had Allegrasso, governor of Connecticut, start us, and the rest of us went on. So she starts the race, and it's a false start, so we all have to stop. And Mike Dukakis, who was then running for president, falls and dislocates the shoulder and spent the rest of that weekend with a bad shoulder. I get blamed for that. But anyway, it was a memorable occasion.
Why would governors engage in a foot race?
Because I made them.
Did you think you could win?
Yeah, I had run for Princeton, as you remember.
No, I didn't know that.
And
you ran track at Princeton?
Yeah. And so I thought...
Long distance, short distance?
No, shorter the better. 60-yard dash was the best. And anything longer, I lost ground. But I would run 60, 100, 220, even a 440.
A sprinter as a student, a marathoner as a politician, maybe.
Yeah. No. As a matter of fact, one of the articles when I announced for governor in '73, one of the articles started off, Byrne ran for Princeton and nothing else. And now he's running for governor. Anyway, so yeah, that was why we ran the dash.
What do you know about your family history in Ireland?
A lot about it. My grandmother on my father's side actually lived with us for my first 10 years, and I got to know her pretty well. I got to know a lot about Ireland. She would use an expression, it's very blowy and slippy out today. And I thought that was unique to my grandmother. But I got over to Ireland, I was in the airport, and there was a sign that says the floor is very slippy today. So yeah, a lot of things. She had a poem that it is a shameful sight to see children of a family fall out the street and fight. And she would give us that poem anytime she saw we were having disagreements among ourselves. No, I knew her pretty well. I knew enough about Ireland so I could find her street when I went over there. And my other grandmother, who I didn't know as well, but I knew, was from County Roscommon. And I found some of her relatives when I went over a few years ago. She had a relative by the name of Riley, who was a nun over there, and I got to know her.
Were these ancestors of yours farmers or tradespeople? Do you have any idea what?
Yes, my father's family ran a butcher shop in Castlebar, and I think my maternal grandmother family were farmers in Roscommon.
And what at what point did these families come to America?
Civil War. I remember my grandmother telling me how she came over here as a young girl during the Civil War, and how they were hanging slaves in New York, and she saw that taking place. And
Hanging slaves.
Hiding.
Hiding.
hanging.
Hanging.
Yes.
Why would you hang a slave?
Read the books on that. They resented the fact that we were in a civil war to free the slaves, and there's a documented history about this. Some professor from Princeton wrote a book on this.
McPherson.
Yeah, McPherson, was it? I asked him about it, and he gave me a...
You say your ancestors came over around the time of the Civil War. Was there did famine drive them over, as it drove many Irish over?
I think it was, yeah, I think there was still famine problems, but it wasn't the beginning of the famine. It was, the famine was in the 40s, and they came over in the early 60s, so that's almost 20 years they endured the difficult times in Ireland.
I think on that note we should stop for
Okay.
now.